Shabbat Shalom. What a pleasure to have you. Join me, Rabbi Flip Rice, Congregation Micah's BLT. Invite you to grab a BLT, that's some bagels, some love, and some Torah, and join me as we look at this week's parasha, this week's Torah portion, called Shlach Lecha. Rolls right off the tongue. We always begin our sessions with a blessing for Torah. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu, melech ha'olam, asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah. So we are commanded here to study words of Torah. We always like to begin a little bit of like what I call brain candy to kind of get the mind working before we delve into the sacred text. And I've always been fond of some of these short essays by Rabbi David Wolpe, so I share the following with you. It's called The First Question. What is the first question in the Bible? Before humanity was created, there were no questions. The first occurs in the Garden of Eden. Adam and Eve have just eaten of the forbidden fruit. God calls out to them, Ayecha, where are you? How can that be? Does not God know where Adam and Eve are? For centuries, Jews have understood that this question has a deeper meaning. God is not seeking to locate Adam and Eve. That is why they do not answer, hey, we're over here. Instead, it's a question of spiritual geography. Adam, understanding the import of God's question, answers that he was frightened, so he'd been hiding. That question is not only the first question, it's also the eternal question. At each moment in our lives, this question is addressed to us. Where are you? Where are you spiritually? Where are you morally? What have you done with your life? And what are you going to do with it now? Are you proud of your conduct in the garden? The first question is a single word whose echoes are endless. Ayecha, where are you? I'm sorry we're not together where we could discuss this. I like to make a connection to Ayecha to Echa, which is the book of Lamentations. And there the question is not really where are you, but how could you? So we're a community of questions. We are a tradition of questions. And we're going to take a look at our parasha. So thanks for joining us this morning. I'll be with you in just a moment. What's that? You're hungry for a little bit more brain candy before we turn to the text? Okay, I've got one. It's called Our Own Prisons. Sound like a good one for the pandemic? Rabbi Ari Levin was called the Holy Man of Yerushalayim of Jerusalem. He spent his adult life in Israel, where he visited prisoners, bringing them comfort, food, spiritual sustenance. Once, after Passover, some of the Jewish prisoners told Rabbi Aryeh that although the Seder had been good, something important was missing. Because they were in prison, they could not perform the traditional rite of opening the door for Elijah, an act that invites redemption, for Elijah is the heralder of the Messiah. Surely there was no enslavement more absolute than the inability to coax forth redemption. Rabbi Ari replied, every man is in a prison of their own self. He cannot leave by going out of the house, but only by passing through the door of the heart. And to make an opening for himself in his own heart, that anyone can do, even a prisoner behind bars. And then he'll be in true spiritual freedom. At each significant moment during the year, each of us should seek to understand where we are enslaved and open the door to our hearts. The door is the portal of goodness, repentance, and faith. So however locked up you may feel you are, know that you can open it here. And I hope you do that now as we turn to text. Okay, get ready for some drama. Lots of drama in this week's episode of As the Torah Turns. Yeah, God commands Moses to send scouts into the land of Israel, who return with a mixed report. Two of the scouts, Joshua and Caleb, reveal that the land flows with milk and with honey. But the other scouts provide a rather frightening report of the land. Its fortified cities, its powerful inhabitants, like Amalekites. Nashenu v'tapenu, Yehu lavaz, Numbers 14:3. Our wives and our children will be taken captive. There's national hysteria by the Jewish people. Again, Nashuva mitzrayma, Numbers 14:4. Let us go back to Egypt. I've been to Egypt. I do not want to go back to Egypt ever again. I'm sorry. Physically or spiritually. Look, the people were afraid. Afraid to go to Israel, like some people still are. Afraid of the challenges that lay ahead. We all experience fear. It's a common feeling right now. Hearts are pumping and breath grows a little short. And we experience it for all sorts of reasons. There are the regular reasons. Our teenage daughter should be home by now, or someone we love is really sick. I'm currently afraid of the airport. I'm sure a lot of people are. I mean, the epidemic of fear, which is now a pandemic, has spread beyond the United States. We're not sure what to do. We're not sure what to do with some of the feelings that we have. And it seems like it's kind of a little bit of a dark time. But we are blessed with this gift of Torah. And I think we should see if the text has anything that might offer us by way of comfort. But let's do a little role-playing first. I thought it would be fun to think about what it would be like to be central command, right? We're at home base. Moses and Aaron are there. God has now instructed the community to send spies to see what kind of country the land of Israel is. If you take a look at Numbers chapter 13, verse 2, chapter 13, verses 17 through 20, that's what I've got in my background as I ask these questions. What are we going to have the scouts check out? What are they going to investigate? What are they going to look into? What are the reconnaissance pieces of information we want them to report back on? And then what does the text tell us are the answers to that? Right? We get message that there are cities. We get message that there are people. We get messages that there are forests, that they bring back some of the fruit of the land. The spies return. They have pomegranates. They have figs. They tell of the powerful people that inhabit the land and these large fortified cities that they live in. And the community shouts sort of at us, at Central Command. Maybe we should call it the tent of meeting. They're upset. They're angry, right? And while some say that it flows with milk and honey, 10 of the spies really frighten the Israelites. They tell of these powerful people. Why is Adonai taking us to the land to fall by the sword? Right, Numbers 14, 1 through 4 again. As leaders of the Israelite community, what can we tell the people in response? I mean, what would you say? And we do have these other people we can point to, right? Tell of their response. The other two spies who say the land is exceedingly good, have faith. But the Israelites reject them and sort of threaten to pelt Joshua and Jacob, the other two stones, with stones. The other two spies with stones. Why? What's the sin? Right? The rabbis tell us there's a sin here. Was it slander? That they had described the land as one that eats up its inhabitants? That it was difficult to farm? That it had poor soil quality, polluted air. Worse, the 12 spies discredit the entire mission, right? Their goal was to enter the land. They're destroying the Israelite dream and the promise. They're crushing it. Or was it that the spies have conspired to convince the people that God is leading to the land of opportunity, but only for disaster? The spies' sin somewhat seems like is that they were deceptive. They offer opinions rather than just mere facts from their mission. They're negative. They're half empty, not half full kind of people. They're bad spies. And by extension, probably bad leaders. Enter Adonai, God, right? Tells Moses that since the people have no faith, I'm going to destroy them. But Moses responds to the challenge, right? Who else responds to the challenge? Abraham Avinu, Abraham, our father. You go back to Genesis 18. So Moses' challenge to God in Numbers 14, 13 through 19. God responds 14, 20 through 15. I invite you to take a look at that. Earlier we are seeing in chapter 13, verse 18, that God is described as slow to anger, abounding in kindness, forgiving iniquity of fathers upon children, upon third and fourth generations. By the way, this is quoted in the Yom Kippur Eve liturgy immediately after Kol Nidre. And the people are told that their lack of faith, that they're now going to wander in the wilderness for 40 years, that their entire generation of those who were freed from Egypt will die in the desert. So before you call complaining the congregation of Micah, right, know that it's really only your children that will conquer the land. And despite what they hear, the people, the children of Israel, change their minds, are now ready to conquer the land. They attack but are shattered by the Amalekites and the Canaanites. So we do get some other valuable information in the summary here of the Parsha. The stranger is addressed in Numbers chapter 15. I point you specifically to verses 15 and 16. Stoning the one who gathers wood on Shabbat. Okay, I'm going to have a little drosh coming up, a Devar Acher on stoning. But there we're looking at Numbers chapter 15, verse 32. And tzitzit, the fringed garments. Numbers, I don't have the listing, but also contained. And we'll take a look at some of this stuff. I hope you'll stick around. Thanks. I don't know why I thought I'd chant for you, but I'm going to chant. Baruch et Adonai HaMevarach. Baruch Adonai HaMevarach le'olam va'ed. Baruch ata Adonai Eloheinu melech ha'olam asher bakar banu mikol ha'amim v'natan lanu et torato. Baruch ata Adonai noten ha'torah. Vayedaber Adonai el Moshe le'mor. Shlach lecha anashim. Vayaturu et eretz Canaan asher ani noten livnei Yisrael. Ish echad lemate avotav tishlachu kol nashim bahem. Vayishlach otam Moshe Mamidbar paran al pi Adonai kulam anashim Rashi b'nei Yisrael chema va'ela shemotam lemate Ruvain Shamua ben Zakur lemate Shimon Shaphat ben Chori lemate Yehuda Caleb ben Yefuneh lemate Yisachar Yigal ben Yosef lemate Ephraim Hoshua ben Nun lemate Binyaman Balti ben Refuah lemate Zebulun Gadiel ben Sodi lemate Yosef lemate Menashe Gadi ben Sosi. It keeps going, but I'm going to stop there. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan lanu Torah temet v'chayehi olam nata b'tochenu. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah. It's from the beginning of the portion. And God spoke to Moses, saying, "Send men to scout the land of Canaan." Right, you get the idea. This idea to scout the land. There's a little discrepancy, believe it or not, whether or not God actually commanded that. I mean, it seems pretty clear, right? But the results of the expedition were quite disastrous, as the Torah goes on to tell us as you head into the next chapter. The plan was ill-conceived and badly prepared for, and the idea to send spies to scout it out seems to be coming from God. But when Moses retells the story in Deuteronomy chapter 1, verses 22 through 40, he reminds the Israelites that it was them that put pressure on him to set up an investigation commission to spy out the land. And their insecurity as to where they were going was a sign of disbelief in God. Therefore, the rabbis sort of interpret it kind of uniquely. Proper intelligence and reconnaissance work is a prerequisite, probably, for successful warfare. The Israelites, too, at a later stage, when Joshua is about to check Jericho, send men to spy the enemy territory. You can check that out in the book of Joshua, chapter 2. And even after having dismally failed in their first spying project, they proceed. What were the reasons for their failing now and their success later? Okay, it seems that their demand to send spies to explore the land in the time of Moses was not part of the war effort. They didn't want to learn as much as in the time of Joshua, which is the best way to enter the land, or what they would militarily gain. But rather, it is whether or not it was worth going there altogether. That's what they wanted to know. If it's really a land of milk and honey, like they were promised. As if they were going to the land of Israel could be taken conditionally, saying, "I'll go, but first I must see if I like it there." The difference between the two expeditions is also in the manner in which they were composed, which is to say that Joshua sent two men, anonymous secret agents, who camouflaged their identity, hiding out in the house of Rahab, a prostitute. The number of people sent by Moses was no less than 12. As I chanted, you heard a lot of names, right? Mate from the tribe of, so each tribe probably demanded to be represented, is the rabbi's guess, on such an important mission. They were not anonymous agents. I chanted all their names, or a good chunk of them. They were leaders of Israel. Their names were prominently listed. Name and father's name, son of Ben Yahuna. As befits sort of distinguished leadership mission people. It's sweet and a little weird ego-wise. Whenever we take a mission to Israel, the tour companies love to put Rabbi's flippin' Lori Rice on the front of the bus. Anyway, we prefer, the Micah ways to be a little more anonymous. It's no doubt that beneath their dignity, their honor, to sleep in a prostitute's house, right? You would think the rabbis would have trouble about them doing that. You would think distinguished leaders on a public mission deserve to stay in, 5-star hotels. But Kli Yakar, the popular Torah commentary by Rabbi Ephraim of, I'm going to try and pronounce this, Lunschitz, Luntschtsz, his dates are 1550 to 1619, finds one additional reason for the impending failure of the mission. The mission failed, this Kli Yakar suggests, because it was made up of men only, and despite its enormous size, did not include even one woman. That's progressive, don't you think? Had they followed the will of God, they would have sent on the mission women who know how to love the land of Israel much more than the men. Be that as it may, the episode of the Meragim, the spies, remained a traumatic experience in the annals of the history of Israel. It sealed the fate of the entire generation to die in the wilderness without reaching the land of their destination. It was not without profound effect on future generations as well. The spies were asked to go to the land and return with a report of what they saw. So they did. They didn't lie or twist the facts as they saw them. They brought back a truthful report that no one contested. What then was so terrible about their acts, which were so severely condemned? It was because they overstepped the perimeters of their appointments. They were delegated to be a fact-finding mission and were given specific assignments. Glance at verses 17 through 20. They spared no effort to carry out their assignment, went up and down the country, kept an open eye, and registered everything they heard and they saw. Upon returning, they reported in detail about everything. So far, so good. The tragic havoc was caused by adding to their otherwise objective report only one extra word. We went to the land to which you sent us, they told Moses. It does flow with milk and honey. Here is the fruit. They buttressed their testimony with concrete evidence. They added one word, but, and continued their factual testimony. The people who live there are powerful, and the cities are fortified and very large. Had they left out the word but, they would have stayed within the limits of a factual report. A land flowing with milk and honey, powerful people, fortified large cities. When they added the word but, it was no more a factual account, but an attempt to sway public opinion. Yes, but, right? They do this in the South. They say, I love them to death, but. Yeah. The dramatic public debate brought out subtle tendencies of the spies to spread fear. Yeah, because this debate ensued right after the 10 spies and the dissenting Caleb of accounting from Joshua and Caleb, right? Pointing to they were not concerned with the facts. No one contested the facts, actually, but the conclusions that they were drawing from the facts. So this debate spread fear and panic among all the people, and Caleb and Joshua tried to combat this tendency. In their demoralizing the campaign, the spies keep mentioning the Anakim, the dreadful breed of giants whose presence in the land of Canaan would make it impossible for the Israelites to conquer it. The repeated mention of the Anakim discourages the people, sort of takes out their hearts and melts it away. We seem like grasshoppers in our own eyes, and so we looked the same to them, the spies announced. 13, verse 33. When a person seems like nothing is in his own eyes, comments a modern rabbi, he would look the same in the eyes of others. Joshua and Caleb did not contradict the facts as they were presented in the majority report. In their dissent, they refute the unhealthy attitude as to the ability of the people to go into the land. The land we passed through to explore, they assert, is exceedingly good. The cities are indeed large and fortified, yet there's no reason to fear them, nor the giant Anakim, for they are lachmenu. Their strength is gone. The word lachmenu there, usually translated as our bread, like lechem, meaning we shall swallow them up as one swallows bread, Rashi comments. A more startling interpretation of lachmenu is that it comes from the same root as milchama, war. Thus, Joshua and Caleb are not only boosting the people to regain confidence in their own strength, they went further in stating that, as to the giant Anakim, of which you are so scared, they are lachmenu, our war. We personally will take care of them. We were not only arguing, we shall also act and take on personal responsibility to prove our point. It's amazing, so many years later, as the land is conquered by the Israelites, we find that Joshua and Caleb, advanced years at that point, had not forgotten their commitment and did actually take care personally of the Anakim. The story is told in detail in the book of Joshua, the end of chapter 11, and in the one of the most moving narratives in the Bible in the same book in chapter 14. Thank you for joining us. Stay tuned for some more interpretations. How are you feeling? I say that because feelings reveal our emotions, and sometimes they're hard to name. But if stick with me, this interpretation is kind of an interesting one. At the outset of our portion, Shlach, God tells Moses to send men that may search out the land of Canaan, right? Same beginning of the Torah, Bamidbar, Parashat Shlach Lecha, chapter 13, verse 2. And Rashi comments on the extra word lecha, Shlach Lecha. So like Lech Lecha, it's send forth for yourself, for you. This is, quote, according to your own judgment. I do not command you, but if you do so, send them. This is where they get into that. Did God send them or not send them? So in the words of the Talmud, it pleased Moses well, but not the all-present. That's in Soda, page 34b. Before the Jewish people entered the land of Israel, they decided to send meraglim, spies, right? That's what we've been talking about, to explore the land and to investigate the value of Eretz Yisrael for the people. Seemingly, this was a legitimate undertaking. I mean, after all, a responsible person does not commit to a real estate proposition unless and until it's conceived of as a good idea. Yet, although Moses liked the idea, God's misgivings about the venture are clear, I guess, to the rabbis at least. Misgivings seem difficult to appreciate. Moses, the faithful servant, surely trusted God's judgment. His agreement to send the mission was born not out of a lack of faith. Maybe his motivation was to increase the people's excitement through the glowing report the land would receive. So why didn't this meet with God's approval? The search for an answer to this question lies in an understanding of the role of language in real life. We are under the impression that language is the avenue of communication between people. But this being granted, language is not without its built-in faults. Consider the statement by famous psychologist Rudolf Arnheim. I found that as soon as you have a concept for something, you start to exclude it from the checkup of continued experience. If you do not constantly expose your concepts to experience, they rapidly become rigid and paralyzed. They become lifeless cliches, fossils of experience. So Arnheim goes on to point out that the verbal concept is a shell placed over a certain experience. The great discoveries in each science came from people who ignored existing concepts in order to get back to the experience. Einstein, for example, right, was unable to speak until the age of 3, and thus he developed an extraordinary feel for nonverbal concepts. Einstein wrote that his initial grasp of relativity was a kinesthetic image, a certain feeling he would get through his body. In our own literature, we have examples of language transcendence which point to this idea. The service of the Torah is greater than the study thereof. It's from the Talmud also, Berachot, page 7b. Study is a word-language exercise. Service is a real experience of Jewish dictates. There was great reluctance to commit the oral tradition, the Mishnah, to writing. It was an oral tradition, right? And only because of the danger that it might be forgotten was the tradition put down in writing. It's better that one letter prohibiting the writing of the oral tradition be uprooted than the whole Torah be forgotten. It's from the Talmud also, Truma, page 14b. Oral tradition, the language of life experience, is quite obviously an integral part of Jewish life, a part that was somewhat lost in the redaction of the Talmud, and we could add, a little bit lost in a pandemic when we can't be together. Even so, we still may find tales and statements in the Talmud which almost defy reason, and these are attempts to transcend the concrete limitations of language. And it is in this context that they should be approached from a more mystical perspective. Experience, then, is much more a part of human endeavor than language. And experience includes the actualizing of the senses, the feelings of emotion about an issue or an ideal. And in such a vein, it's possible to appreciate the heavenly reluctance regarding the exploration of the Meraglim, the spies. They might have come back with a glorious report, a position paper on Israel, but they would have reduced an emotive idea to sterile words. The people would have been then entered Israel with their minds and not with their whole beings, their hearts and their souls. So quite instructive is a comment from this Klik Yakar that I mentioned, right? This idea that men, not women, love the land emotionally, women loved it and would have come back only with an emotive experience about Israel. Israel, and I bring this up, is an experience. It's an experience beyond words. It defies language. The only word that works, I think, is indescribable. And no explanatory report could have maintained the emotive pitch of the land. Even today, people who love Israel can hardly convey their feelings in words. We take students there, and we say, "What was the best part?" And, "Awesome! It was so cool." There's just this emotive feeling toward Israel that transcends language, and it cannot be chronicled or filmed or reported in its totality. Because it cannot be concretized, it can never suffer the fate of concrete things. It can't be torn or withered or destroyed. It is an emotion and therefore eternal, like Israel itself, we hope. Let's stay tuned for another Devar Acher. Adonai erech alpayim v'rav chesed noseh avon v'fasha v'niket lo yinakeh poked avon avot al bani al shlishim ve'al rebi'im. The Lord, slow to anger, abounding in kindness, forgiving iniquity and transgression, yet not remitting all punishment, but visiting the iniquity of fathers upon children, upon the third and fourth generations. It's chapter 14, verse 18. And I got two little midrashim I wanted to share on it. One comes from Haketav VeHaKabbalah. I don't know what that is. Visiting the iniquity of the fathers upon children here, the Hebrew word poked, like ufoked Sarah, right? God visits Sarah, may also be translated as a sense of lessening, as in vilo nefkad mimenu ish. And here he points us to a concept in Numbers 31 through 49. The verse then could be constructed to read, lessening the iniquity of the fathers for the sake of the children. I.e., if the fathers have good children, their iniquity be forgiven for the sake of their merits of their own children. Woo! Saves the verse. Another attempt to explain it. This one coming in a sort of parable that was told by Pardes Yosef. Here we go. Why should the children be blamed for the sins of their parents? So that they, the children, should be made to suffer for the wrong done by their fathers and mothers? Oy vey. Even if the children, following in the footsteps of their parents, should also sin, would it not be proper that they need suffer only their own sin, but not for the iniquities of their parents? In a book entitled Parable of the Wolves, there is a tale that goes as follows. A wolf was very hungry and wanted to devour a fox. Said the fox to the wolf, "Why eat my scrawny flesh when you could have the large fat human over there? Why not eat the human and have a really good meal?" Said the wolf, "It's forbidden to eat humans. You know, wouldn't I be punished?" "Do not worry," replied the fox. "You will not be punished. The punishment will only come to your young." The wolf, persuaded himself that the fox was right, trotted toward the man, but a trap had been set, and he fell into a deep pit. Hearing the wolf's howls, the fox rushed to the pit. "Liar," the wolf growled. "Did you not say that only my young would be punished?" "Fool," replied the fox. "You didn't fall into the trap because of your deed. This is the punishment of the deed of your father. He once ate a human. Do you mean to say," the wolf shouted, "that I have to suffer for the wrongs that my father did? You insisted on getting ready to eat the human, even though you knew that your young would suffer on your account," answered the fox. Therefore you must now suffer on account of your father." The above parable, according to the rabbis, makes it easy to understand why children should be punished for the sin of their parents. And that is, when people sin, although they're aware that their children will have to suffer as a result, it's only right that they themselves should be made to suffer for the sins of their parents. If they follow in the evil footsteps of the parents, the Lord will visit the iniquity of the fathers upon the children, measure for measure. An interpretation. Let's stay tuned for Devar Acher. A personal note from Rabbi Rami Shapiro on the text in Numbers 15. We're going to look specifically at verses 32 through 36, which read, "The children of Israel were in the wilderness, and they found a man gathering wood on the Sabbath day. Those who found him gathering wood brought him to Moses and Aaron and to the entire assembly. They placed him in custody, for it had not been clarified what should be done to him. God said to Moses, 'The man shall be put to death. The entire assembly shall pelt him with stones outside the camp.' The entire assembly removed him to the outside of the camp. They pelted him with stones, and he died, as God had commanded Moses." So Rabbi Rami Shapiro points out that we are dealing here with one of the more violent sections of the Torah. He does not make any attempt to salvage the section. He does not spiritualize it, make it say what it does not say. On the contrary, he takes it very seriously. He honors it by challenging it. It is an example in the Torah of the powers that use fear and violence and coercion to maintain power as rulers. And the rulers have used God even to enforce their power, rather than, as in the Torah of God, allowing God to use them for their holiness. So it's not an easy part of the Torah to stomach. It shows the dark side of religion, its unbridled quest for control over people's lives. The children of Israel were in the wilderness. They were wandering in the plethora of words that were showering around them. They were deaf to God and God's Torah, lost in the cacophony of their own fears, complaints, primal attitudes, purity codes, and rules. They needed clarity, something concrete on which to lean. There's nothing concrete about the Torah of God. It's based on principles like love and justice and holiness and compassion and peace. It must be applied fresh in every case. It is always life-giving. So the Torah of the powers is about rules. It's lifeless and, as we shall see, life-taking. They find this man gathering wood on the Sabbath day. Here's something concrete. Someone violating the law, a rejecter of the words the priest told them were sacred. Just as God was used to destroy them, now they can use God to destroy someone else. This is human nature at its worst. That's what it is. The abused find someone to abuse. The weak find imitations of power by attacking even weaker people than themselves. They place him in custody, for it had it not been clarified what should be done to him. They knew that this was a capital offense, but they did not know how God wanted the death to be carried out. I mean, does God want us to die for picking up sticks on Saturdays? Is this the God that freed us from Egypt? Is this the God that loves and forgives? Or is this the voice of the powers behind the curtain of the Holy One of Holies, like the Wizard of Oz? The voice of the wizard behind the curtain. And if you believe it is God, what kind of God do you follow? And what kind of religion is God offering you? If you do not believe it's God, but take it to be the voice of the powers masquerading as God, then where do you stand up to the powers and speak truth? The man shall be put to death. The entire assembly shall pelt him with stones outside of the camp. This is pure genius, right? The powers condemn the people, do the actual condemn, but the people do the actual murdering. Everyone is complicit in the crime. Who can claim the moral high ground and challenge the powers if they're all murderers and complacent? Sound contemporary? Readers of the Gospels cannot help but think of Jesus defending the woman about to be stoned to death for adultery. Who among you is without sin that you will cast the first stone? The people of God, the holy nation, has now been coerced into being a nation of murderers. When the rock throwers in the Mea Shearim toss stones at cars driving by their neighborhoods on the Sabbath day, they are demonstrating Torah true Judaism, but it is the Torah of the powers, not the Torah of God. And finally, as God commanded, this is the key to the claim of the powers. God demands these horrible crimes, right? Not them. They are only doing what they were commanded to do. Let us not judge the past by the standards of today, but let us not infect the present with the moral weakness of the past. I mean, the Nazis were only doing what they were told to do. So, it's an evil part of our Parsha. It is not one's generally favorite part of the Torah, but it shows its realness in having been written by human beings. I think we'll move on to a little Haftarah and then conclude our session. So our Torah portion and our Haftarah portion tell of spies sent out to explore the land of Israel that was destined to be occupied by the Israelites. In the Sidra, in the Torah, Joshua ben Nun is one of the 12 spies. In the Haftarah, as the successor of Moses, in the leadership of the people, he follows his mentor's example, but the new mission turns out to be quite different. The story of the dramatic conquest of Jericho is told later in chapter 6 of the book of Joshua and is not utilized as the Haftarah, but Joshua chapter 2, verses 1 through 24 is what you're about to hear. Just so you get a little more background, the setting here is Joshua's assumption of leadership in the beginning of the invasion, which occurred in the year 1200, we think, before the Common Era. Archaeologists also consider this the beginning of the Iron Age. People were poised on the east side of the Jordan, were now ready to cross over and start the campaign. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bachar binim tovim b'ratzav divreihem hane'emarim be'emet Baruch atah Adonai abocher b'torah u'Moshe avdoho u'Yisrael amoho Joshua, son of Nun, secretly sent 2 spies from Shittim, saying, "Go, explore the countryside of Jericho." When they got to Jericho, they came to the house of the prostitute named Rahab and stayed there. Someone told the king of Jericho that some Israelites had come that night to spy out the country. So he sent word to Rahab, "The men who just arrived are in your house, have come to spy out the whole country. Bring them out." But instead, the woman had taken the 2 men and hid them. So she answered, "Yes, indeed, the men did come to me, but I don't know where they were from." And they left as it was getting dark, just before the city gates were closed. I don't know where they were going, but if you hurry after them, you can catch them. Actually, she had taken them up to the roof and hidden them under some stalks of flax she had arranged for herself. The pursuers went as far as the Jordan, as far as the fords, and as soon as they left the town, the gate was shut. Before the spies settled down for the night, Rahab went up to them onto the roof and said to them, "I know that the Eternal has given you this land. Dread of you has befallen on us, and all of the inhabitants of this land are scared to death of you. We have heard now the Eternal dried up the waters of the Reed Sea for you when you were leaving Egypt, and how you dealt with Sihon and Og, the 2 Amorite kings of the east of the Jordan, how you wiped them out. Our hearts sank as soon as we heard about it. And because of you, our spirits are low. For the Eternal, your God, is God in heaven above and here on earth. Now swear by the Eternal that you will treat my family as well as I have treated you, and give me a sign that I can trust, that you will save my father and mother, my brothers and sisters, and all their families. Save us from death." The men said to her, "We give our lives for yours. As long as you do not betray what we have been doing, we shall treat you well and faithfully when the Eternal gives us this land. Rahab lived in the house built into the city wall, so she left the men down the hill to a window by a rope. She said to them, "Head for the hills, so that the pursuers don't run into you. Hide there for 3 days, until they come back. Then go your way." The men had warned her, "We shall be free of the oath you made us swear. Unless we invade the country, you tie this cord of red thread outside the window through which you let us down. Bring your father and your mother, your brothers, and your family together in your house. If anyone goes out to the house, his blood shall be on his own head, and we shall not be responsible. But if any harm comes to anyone who remains in your house, we shall be responsible. And if you tell anyone what we've been doing, we will be free of the oath you have made us swear." Just as you say, she had said, she sent them on their way. And when they had gone, she tied the red cord to the window. They went straight to the hills and stayed there 3 days until the pursuers who had stretched all along the road without success returned to Jericho. Then the 2 spies came down from the hills, crossed the river, and went back to Joshua. They told him everything that had happened to them. They said to Joshua, "The Eternal has put the whole country in our hands. All the people there are scared to death of us." Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam tzur kol haolamim tzadik b'kol hadorot ha'el ha'ne'eman ha'omer ve'oseh ha'medaber mekayem shechol devarahav emet b'tzedek al ha'torah ve'al ha'avodah ve'al ha'nevim ve'al yom ha'shabbat hazeh Shenatata lanu Adonai Eloheinu likdusha v'limnucha lekavod ultifaret al hakol Adonai Eloheinu anachnu modim lach umevarachim otach yitbarak shimcha v'fi kol chai tamid leolam ba'ed baruch ata Adonai mekadesh hashabat. I do hope you've enjoyed spending a little time in the texts of our people. I do hope you will join us again in further weeks. I want to thank you for being with us. I want to thank Hannah for putting the videos together. I want to thank God for giving us the Torah. And I want to thank Congregation Micah for making it available to us all. All right. Enjoy the day. Shabbat Shalom.